So let's do a quick round of introductions. And Sergi, why don't you start? You are from the beautiful city of Barcelona with the most beautiful data center in the world. Please introduce yourself and your organization.
Thank you very much. So my name is Sergi Girona. I'm the CIO of Barcelona Supercomputing Center, a national facility devoted to provide supercomputing services to research and industry.
Okay. Arnaud, can you hear us fine?
Yes. Okay. Hello everybody. I am very pleased to be here. I am the General CIO for all the component military and civilian one of the French Ministry of Defense since 3 years. And just before, I am in charge of the Cyber Command during more than 6 years. I am very happy to be here for this panel.
Thank you very much, Arnaud, and a very warm welcome. And then Erwin, we met earlier this week as well. So welcome again. If you could please introduce yourself and your organization.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everyone, by the way. I'm Erwin Verstraelen. I'm the Chief Digital and Innovation Officer of the Port of Antwerp, a global port, second in Europe, but also the home port of the second largest chemical cluster on the planet. And a port is an innovation candy store. And I have the honor to play around in that environment and to implement all kinds of innovative solutions by combining tech, data, and brand new ideas.
Okay, and the topic, thank you so much, Erwin. The topic of this panel is building partnerships. So all the three leaders that we have here with us today have built some very, very interesting and strong partnerships in their organization. So Niels, why don't you start the panel here?
Sure. Well, actually, before that, so what's fascinating, and as I mentioned at the introduction of the first part of the public sector, it's really fascinating how many of the same challenges that digital leaders face in the public sector are similar, and this is one of them: building partnerships. This is an absolutely critical capability of becoming future ready. And so we'd love to first get a sense from those participating in the audience about, to what extent are they involved in building partnerships? And so please, are you not involved? That's the first option. The second option is, you're consulted when needed. The third option is, you're involved in the decision-making process. And then the fourth is much more of a proactive role. You're driving the partnerships of your organization. So we'd love to hear from the audience to get a sense of their role with regards to building partnerships before we bring it back to the panelists.
Okay, let's end the poll here. So we have, and let's look at the results. So I'm gonna read them out for those people who are not following us on Zoom. So about 30% of the participants say we are not involved at all in building any partnerships. 6% says yes, we're consultants when needed. 25% says we are involved in the decision-making process of building partnerships. And 38%, the largest of the four options, 38% says, well, as digital leaders, we are driving the creation of these strategic partnerships. So let's talk about building partnerships in the public sector, Niels.
I'd love to start, maybe with the Vice Admiral, if you could talk about partnerships, and because I know you described in the video interview that's available online, you described some pretty significant ones that you're leading. Could you elaborate on that and tell those that aren't familiar with that accomplishment what you've been doing?
Yes, in fact, I think that my peculiarity is that the organization of the Ministry of Defense is probably the used one in the European area. And we are very different sort of system about aircraft, submarine. And the particularity also is that we have a great organization like other company. And we have to manage all these assets. And my job, because my direct chief is Mrs. Florence Parly, the Minister of Defense, and I work very, very close with the COMEX of the Ministry of Defense. For example, at the beginning of my job, I have 7 COMEX in less than 8 months in order to push the move for the digital transformation. But this digital transformation, we are very close also from a very big company. And we put many money on the table with the company because we have more than 2 billion euro only for the investment, not for people, only for investment, and mainly on R&D also, because we have a new innovation agency. And we are main partners. But also to help us in the digital transformation, we are dealing with Defense Connect Society. It is a group of 13 companies who are not no need to sell to Ministry of Defense, but they are a big company in order to help us to manage digital transformation. Is company like EDF for the power grid, company like SNCF for railway. We have the same problem. La Poste also, we have many discussions with them. And also we are a member of a big French organization, is a CIGREF, with altogether more than 150 companies.
Yep.
So this is very, very important for us.
Okay, great. And just to set a bit of context, you explained it already, Arnaud, the IT in the French army, IT and telco together is 22,000 people, and with a budget of 3.5 billion. I mean, this is
Yes. But on the budget, you have also information system, but also communication system, SATCOM, and something like that. And for and the amount for the IT, traditional IT, is average 1 billion euro. And my job here is to have a technical way, political way, on technical side, on IT, to rebuilding the IT architecture of the Ministry of Defense, but also with the data, because I am in charge of data for all the Ministry of Defense, and also of the coordination of the human resources, and to refund the governance. It is a very big, is a very big bargain.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and we'll get back to you in a moment when we talk about Gaia X, great project that you're setting up. Sergi, why don't we go to Barcelona and you tell us a little bit. I mean, the supercomputer center that you're leading there, the technology of that computer center. I mean, partnerships are very, very important. Can you give us a bit of an overview of your strategic partnerships and how you as a CIO are involved?
Sure. So as I mentioned, the Barcelona Supercomputing Center objective and mission is to provide HPC services for science and for industry, for HPC, AI, and data management. So after research, you have innovation. And the objective we are having is we are focusing and to help society to have these advantages of using research. So we are a public consortium conformed by the Spanish Ministry of Science and Innovation, the Catalan government, and the Technical University of Catalonia. You see our premises are located in Barcelona city, and our chapel that houses the Mare Nostrum sitting behind me is located. Okay, so for people to know, it's a system that is having 165,000 processors. So the objective is to use all together for solving a single problem. So in the case of companies and clients, those companies are not searching from us the capacity to use the systems, but instead of performing research with us to enable the methods, the methodologies, the algorithms, and to use in labs these systems for improving their business models. At the end, when they are finished, when the methodology is proven, when they are enabled, they can go to execute on their premises, or they can use the cloud instead. Okay. So we have many examples on this. So for example, for society, energy is important. So we are supporting Repsol company in Spanish-based one, which is trying to follow the policy of the carbonization of this company, and they are trying to find new methods to identify new energy sources and to identify better how they can enable these mechanisms of energy. We are also supporting Verstraelen for wind generation, so establish the location of the wind farms and enabling the development of the wind generation tunnels. So making sure that they are getting the best energy of the wind generation. Of course, it's not only companies that we are having corporations, but we are also having the vendors working with us, because at the end we have long expertise on using technologies and developing new methods. So we have long-term cooperations with Lenovo, Intel, NVIDIA, Fujitsu, IBM, you name it, all of them. So for example, with IBM, we have been recently establishing a framework for developing deep learning technologies focused on personalized medicine. This is very, very neat these days. And in fact, and last but not least, I want to mention one very recent cooperation we have with pharmaceutical companies as Grifols. So we are helping them in a project led by Iris Kasia to discover vaccine prototypes and antibody therapies for the COVID-19. So this is things that are coming daily, okay? So these are our corporations.
You have a very interesting environment. You're really at the leading edge. You're providing high-performance compute services for innovation, basically, in many different energy, pharma, many health, and so on, many different areas. Very, very, very exciting. Thank you for sharing that. Erwin, I know that in the port of Antwerp that you call your play garden now, that the building partnerships has been very high on your agenda. Could you give us a bit of your view on this, where you are and how do you see this evolve?
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, and the starting point for starting to build these partnerships, ecosystems for us, primarily are 5 strategic goals that we had identified at the beginning of 2018, which are very broad. Okay, first of all, in line with the fact that we as a port are already very broad in scope. So it had to do with mobility, sustainable transition, sustainable growth, safety, security. So we started to build several partnerships, ecosystems around these topics. For example, the Beacon, which is an ecosystem of fundamental research, applied research, startup scale-ups, and so on around Internet of Things to be applied in the context of smart ports, smart city. Another one is the Maritime Campus Antwerp that we're now setting up together again with leading shipping lines, with the Nautical College around the future of shipping, also dealing with energy transition in shipping. Blue Chem, Blue App, together with the chemical industry related to new chemistry, climate change, CO2, and so on. And then finally, we are part of Chainport, which brings together 15 deep sea ports that collectively responsible for 50% of the global container trade. Many of these ports are very different in DNA, but yet we understand that we have the same challenges, and we want to understand how everybody is dealing with that and how we can turn the challenge into an opportunity where we can collaborate and so on. So, and the foundation is not only for these partnerships is not only, okay, the strategic goals, that's the context, but also a deep belief that partnerships, ecosystems really are a lever or a catalyst in achieving our goals. And we understand that we can't achieve our goals on our own, or even more, it would be very unwise to try to do so, because we can enrich ourselves so much more by surrounding ourselves with all these different stakeholders, going from academia to private industry to whatever, because it enriches us, it gives us new ideas, it gives us new opportunities that we wouldn't think about. And I've seen often these combinations happen where you see a piece of technology somewhere from a totally different angle being merged with a use case that we have. And so we have plenty of use cases. That's the opportunity we have. But seeing those two things come together is very strong. And so we're committed to go along that path and to keep building ecosystems with as many stakeholders we can get, because I believe it's a sort of a critical mass. And once you have that, it starts to speed up the process of innovation.
Okay. I'd love to build on those insights from all of you in terms of, you know, there's a theme that's been throughout the day is uncertainty and trying to get things done amidst this growing uncertainty. And one approach is to take more of an agile test and learn approach to learn about, you know, different aspects of what's uncertain. You know, what do the partner needs? What are we capable of doing together, etc.? There's all these questions that come up. And I'd love to just get a sense from all of you about, based on your recent experiences, what would you highlight as a success factor that really helps you learn about whether a partnership makes sense or not, etc., right? How do you get through some of this uncertainty that's prevalent in partnerships?
Yeah. Well, I learned a very valuable lesson from the manager of the Beacon, who had quite an experience in setting up ecosystems, some that were successful and some that failed. And he told me once something related to the Beacon, why he believed so strongly in that ecosystem. And that is something that always stuck my mind, is that it depends upon four things. First of all, that when you create a partnership or an ecosystem, it has to be done by complementary partners. I think that's lesson number one. Advice number two is when you do something, it has to have societal relevance. Number three, if you set up an ecosystem or partnership, do it in an environment where there is fertile ground, so that you don't have to go to the other side of the planet to prove that you have something to offer. But four, that what you do, once you have proven it locally, can scale to the globe. And I try to apply that to all the partnerships that I have in front of me to see if more or less those four elements are somewhere part of the mix. Not always all 100%, but at least some elements are, at least in each of these four dimensions, there is something. And for me, that is a upfront guarantee that one way or another, you will be successful.
Sergi or Vice Admiral, I don't know if any of you want to address this notion of how do you go about learning whether the partnership is the right one to pursue further, or whether it makes sense to just pursue a different one?
So to extend what Erwin says, it's a matter of compatibility, of cooperation, of identifying whether you are not fighting each other, but contributing to the development of the business, of the ecosystem. Is to create a trust between the two of you and to push for a single project altogether. When you identify this, then it's clear that it's a success.
Okay, thank you. Arnaud, what I suggest is that you've been working on a very, very interesting project called Gaia X. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think that's a really, really fascinating partnership that the French are setting up with the Germans, and it's on cloud computing and so on. So please enlighten us what you're doing with Gaia X.
Yes, Gaia X is, I think, is about trusted cloud in the European level, not for the military aspect or only for governmental, but for all the European companies. And for that, I think that it is a very important, a very strategic initiative launched by the German and the French government, by the two presidents. And today, with my experience of cyber and my experience on that digital transformation, I have the very strong conviction that today Europe is at a turning point. We must not forget that we are talking about artificial intelligence. We must have the infrastructure that goes with it, and the infrastructure is for the data management. And we also need in Europe to have the European governance that goes with it. We have the success of spatial industry, and today on the cloud, it is a little bit more difficult. And this is really the problem of the cloud provider for the European country. And I think this European cloud is essential for the future. And this Gaia X brings a lot of meaning and is extremely and strategically important. I think in managing by two major challenges, cloud, data governance, and trusted. And I think that the trust is as important as security. Data are an European common good, like other common goods. We need to protect them, we need to manage, and we need to protect this common good, because this common good belongs to the citizen and only to the market. And for that, Gaia is very, very important. It was launched at the beginning of June. It was a joint initiative of the two governments, supported by all their respective ecosystem, more than 22 partners, like big company on German and French part, but it is very open for all the other countries, and mainly the main part of the company are not German, not French, but they are mainly European companies. And for that, I don't want to say more because there are many documents about Gaia X on the net. But I think that on the CIONET, because we are talking about the European level, about the European CIONET CIO of the year, I think that it's very important that CIONET supports this very political initiative in the period of the crisis of COVID. Is obvious today that we need to have some very system at the level of the European countries.
Yeah, we're very happy to support that and see how we can play a role in that. And I think it's really cool. Basically, how I understand it is that what Europe and France and Germany leading, what you're doing is basically building alternatives so that we as Europeans are no longer dependent from Chinese clouds or American clouds, but we have our own clouds. And I think that if there's one thing that we've learned in the current crisis is that being dependent, globally dependent is not in all cases a very good thing. So Erwin, let's focus a little bit further on I'm very fascinated by your beacon collaboration that you have done there and the Internet of Things. Could you explain a little bit the applications that came out of that and how that was implemented in the port?
Yeah.
The port is a very big port, right?
Yeah, it's 120 square kilometers big. You can take the entire city of Antwerp and put it 6 times in the port. So that gives you an idea. So it's a huge, and that's also how we see it, an innovation platform. It's not just a concept. We just said, listen, we open up the port for all kinds of potential innovations where you can come to the port, test your technology, demonstrate your technology, in many cases even mature your technology before you go to the market, because for many of the companies it's important for them to take their idea, technology out of a lab and put it in practice in a real environment with all the complexities and risks and so on, because keep in mind, given this, that chemical cluster, we are a 54 Seveso company, so you can't just take a drone and start flying over them. And so you have to take into consideration all kinds of constraints, but that's actually quite interesting. Yeah? So for example, 2 years ago, a startup of 5 people knocked on our door and said, hey, we're CFAR, we're in the beacon, and we have technology to make a barge sail remote control, which means that it sails autonomously, but there is a remote control center that allows a captain to intervene. And they said, well, we believe in our technology, but we need 2 things. First of all, a ship, and secondly, a place to sail around with the ship, because we have to demonstrate to the government that it works. Now, I don't still understand why we said yes, but we gave them a ship of a couple of $1 million on the one condition: make sure you find yourself an insurance policy, which they did. And they were allowed to equip the ship with their technology. They sailed around in the port and demonstrated that it worked. And together we were able to convince the government to create new laws or legal framework that allowed them to become operational. And thanks to that, they also convinced their first customers. Another example is we have been fascinated for a while now by the possibilities of hyperspectral and thermal cameras. And especially for detecting oil spills on the water, because we are the 5th largest bunkering port on the planet. So bunkering means taking in fuel for a ship, but once in a while you spill fuel, and we know how much we spend on a yearly basis to clean it up. So we asked a research center that had developed a hyperspectral camera for agriculture if they would be able to apply that technology to detect oil spills during day and night on the water, and where we had the idea to hook it up to a drone and then fly over the water, and as it flew over the water, we'd be able to see, there's an oil spill. So we did an initial pilot in the port, and after they developed the technology, and it turned out that this first iteration, this version number 1, already is capable of identifying 85% of the oil spill. So we're now going to go to a second phase. And yeah, finally, we have historically already over more than 600 cameras in the port, and we are transforming them to become smart. Okay, that's an umbrella term for a lot of things, but being able to detect objects or whatever we want out of camera feed. So, for example, a license plate is an obvious one, but that is a GDPR issue, and we're not even allowed to do that. But for example, train composition. We know how many trains there are in the port, but how many wagons? What kind of wagons? We want to know that. You see, maybe even detect the numbers of the dangerous cargoes that is on these wagons. So these are a couple of examples of technologies and partners from the beacon that we merged with a use case and were able to demonstrate or to find out if it worked in our own port. And for the people, for the companies and the organizations active in the port, in the beacon, sorry, that is really important, having this test bed around the corner, you see, because it speeds up innovation.
And what I love about it is it's this test bed for completely new types of businesses and a real diverse set of businesses. You're helping to generate completely new sources of revenue. So that seems very attractive.
Yeah, and what we found out, that was not part of our initial thinking when we started doing this, is that for many of these, let's say, startups or smaller companies, being able to do this in an area such as the port and having the brand value of saying we did a pilot in the port of Antwerp, that helped a lot. And the most brilliant example during the COVID era was a company called Rombit that had developed a safety bracelet, a wearable, and had activated on that a new feature to do social distancing. They announced that in the port, together with an interview with me and the CEO, with the local press. The week after, they had Reuters and Associated Press, and the week after, they were on CNBC, ABC, and on Al Jazeera. So you see, wow. It even surprised us, but it gave them the rocket, the booster they were waiting for to get their product on the market. So that was quite fascinating to see that happen.
Sergi, I have a question for you. You know, partnerships are challenging. I mean, a lot of the companies that I talk to find them quite challenging. And I would love to hear from you about, you know, a main obstacle that you've had to deal with and how. If you could share something around that, that would be really appreciated.
So the obstacles we have from the public sector and public research are trust and legal matters. Trust. We're having cooperations with companies that have long-term research projects, and these are having doctors, engineers with several years of experience, and they are reluctant to listen from public researchers that they have more experience on specific topics that can help developing their own research. So when you build this trust, then everything is pleasant, everything is fine, everything is going smooth. Then it's coming the legal problem. You have to establish where the IP stays, where the intellectual property stays in the company, in the research centers, and how you can develop this. At the end, for example, we have been trying to establish spin-offs from BNC for many years. And it was since 2 years ago that we were not able, because the Spanish legislation does not permit that the public consortium builds a spin-off on their premises. So for now, we have 7 of them running on. So it's all this matter, trust and legal matters is an obstacle for us.
Okay. So we're coming to the end of this panel. Arnaud, are there any last thoughts, any last things that you wanted to share with us today?
No, just to say that I think the CIO now is truly a manager, and more the organization is important, must to be a manager and to be close to the COMEX. Because and we have to work together, the IT and the métier, the IT and the trade, and that is a new. It will be the new thing with the data at the middle.
Okay, great. Erwin, your last words before we close this panel.
Well, I think a CDO or CDIO or whatever you want to call it has to be a torchbearer. Basically, someone who sheds light on the opportunities and is very instrumental in creating an innovative mindset and a culture. And for sure in public sector, stepping away from a risk averse into a risk embracing kind of approach, where there is room for failure, but there is also a strong belief that if there is a willingness to make things happen, that it can happen. And that it's not the technology that is the roadblock in making it happen, with the mindset.
Okay, great. Sergi?
Yes, identifying needs, providing hints, and enabling solutions. That's our work.
Okay. Great, gentlemen. Now with that, I would like to thank you for your contribution. Please stay online so that in about 15-20 minutes, we know who will be the new European digital leaders of the year.